What it does is it bans abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy.
Welcome back, everyone. Well. This isn't my old friend C.R. Williams. It's been a long time since we've done this. The last time I did a response video to you where we were talking about gun issues, gun rights, and things like that. I was a new channel then. I didn't, like, the back and forth, like, the videos started getting longer and longer and longer and longer. But I was young and naive, and I didn't know how to make a video shorter in response to certain things. I had to do all this complicated, weird stuff, like have a plug in my ear and watch the video and pause it and time everything precisely. But I don't have to do that anymore. Now I can just play.
What it does...
You like that? I can do it again. Play.
Is it bans abortion.
And I know exactly what I'm responding to. So what the Alabama bill actually does do is 6 weeks. I did not know that. So I would like to thank you for pointing that out to me. You made several points in this video that I think were really good. And I think they're worth talking about. First of all, I didn't know it was 6 weeks. I am of the first trimester. I think it's fine when you do the first trimester. The third trimester is reserved for extreme cases, and I'll get to that later. And actually, there's much more qualified people that have made that argument instead of me. I could make it, but I don't feel like it. Not right now, anyway. So 6 weeks is half of the first trimester, and I think I didn't realize it was 6 weeks. It's a pretty decent amount of time. The first trimester is, I got a screenshot here, 12 weeks. So that is half of the first trimester. And then the second trimester, when the central nervous system develops, that's when we say, no, there's ethical, moral issues that go into play in that. All right, so I didn't know that. I honestly didn't know that. So I appreciate you for making that video and bringing some things to the attention of those who didn't know. I honestly didn't know. You brought up another thing that I didn't pay attention, or that I didn't think about in the moment until I saw your video, and I want to bring attention to that as well. All right, so now we have this clip.
This must be the best kept secret in the world. What is the first thing you do when you get raped? The very first thing you do the second you get a chance. It seems like a lot of people don't know the answer to that question for some reason.
So the first thing you do when you get raped, call the police? That'd be my answer. And, you know, you make a valid point that, yeah, you should go to the hospital, but I would bolster to call 911 and get the police and the hospital involved at the same time. And I think it was funny, in the video, I don't have a clip of it, I put that out because I seen it irrelevant, is that they could gather the evidence. One of the things, I thought that was kind of funny because it's like trying to gloss over the grotesque. That girl's got to queef out that cum. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I'm very dark and morbid. If anybody knows anything, should know anything about me, I am dark and morbid, and I find humor like that to be funny. But yeah, she's got to queef out the cum, so then they can get DNA from that. And absolutely, you're right. I agree, they should go to the hospital, but I think the police should be involved as well. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. They can fill out a report. They can even take her to the hospital and get all the evidence that the police would need. They can tell them what they need to prosecute this person. So I agree with that. And I think that that's a valid point that a lot of people didn't pay attention to when this came out. And there's another thing that you brought up that I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to as well. And that is, this is the other point that you brought up. That, I mean, like, if I would have sat down and thought about it long enough, it would have occurred to me. But when you said it, I was like, I honestly didn't even think of that. So here's the clip from your video of that.
If you get an abortion in New York, you have not violated New York's laws, and Alabama laws do not apply to New York. This is how our
So, yeah, you're right. You absolutely can go to another state to have the abortion performed. I didn't think of that. That's really annoying that you would have to do that. And then that boils down into what we philosophically consider to be life and not life. And then you have this statement.
Might want to purchase one in the future. Well, we should all have our AR-15s banned and confiscated because a few assholes killed some children with this. But yet, any sort of restriction on abortion apparently is violating that woman's right to choose, well, to kill her kid.
Now, I don't know what your actual stance on abortion is, if you are for or against abortion or not. But like murdering, I don't consider a first trimester abortion murdering a child. I see it as a clump of cells. The reason why we say first trimester is that is before the central nervous system develops. Now, personally, I've talked about this before. Personally, I consider life to be cognizantly aware. So once it's out of the womb, it's cognizantly aware. However, there is some moral and ethical complications after the first trimester. But as I've said this before as well, Richard Dawkins, biologist, said that the way that he looks at in the framework of efficacy, he asks himself, can it interpret pain? And once the development of the central nervous system, which is roughly at the end of the first trimester and the beginning of the second trimester, is when the central nervous system develops. And at that point, the fetus may not be cognizant, but it does have the capacity to feel pain. And that is why Richard Dawkins says that is why we do not abort after the first trimester, is because of the development of the central nervous system that interprets pain. So it can feel pain after the first trimester. And that's why we don't do it. And I think that's a completely logical and rational conclusion to come to. Now, if you consider it life upon conception, then that's a philosophical difference, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that interpretation, but that is just not personally the interpretation that I hold. I do like the model of not after the first trimester because of the central nervous system. I think that that's a pretty rational argument to make, that after the first trimester you shouldn't do it because it can feel and interpret pain. And it's my understanding that the third trimester abortions are for very, very extreme cases that take a lot of loopholes to jump through to even have one done. And we're talking about like brain dead babies or conditions that will really only allow the child to live outside of the womb for a brief minute or possibly 48 hours to a week. And some of these conditions can render the child in absolute pain. One of the conditions that I've talked about will leave the child in such agonizing pain that it doesn't bleed. It doesn't die from the bleeding. It dies because its central nervous system is overloaded with pain. And so it doesn't live very long. So instead of putting the mom and the dad through that kind of emotional turmoil and tragedy, really is what it is, they will do a third trimester abortion because it's basically already dead before it comes out of the womb. And so to avoid any further tragedy or any further turmoil, they go ahead and they do that. And it's very complicated. There's a lot of loopholes that you got to go through. There was a channel called the Atheist Experience where they go into, and here's a screenshot of that video. I will leave the link to that video in my description, and I will try to put it in the end cards. In the end cards, so that you can view that for yourself. But I think that they made some really compelling arguments in there, and they had a lot of talk about bodily autonomy, and that's something that you could look into. But I think that they made some really compelling arguments in it. So it's been a long time since I've done a response video, but you brought up some really, really good points, and I will have your video in the description below because I do think that you brought up some very, 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 very valid points yourself. And really like what you do with your channel. I like the content that you make. You're a very rational person, and I have a lot of respect for you. And I suppose that's the difference between, like, you know, like the alt-left and the alt-right. They just fight each other, don't they? But like that's the funny thing is, like, there's disagreements that I have with Lothier Mordred, the Gothic Republican. We have disagreements, but we can agree to disagree, and we can talk about these things like civilized human beings and not talk about trying to beat each other up over them. That's ridiculous. So I guess some people just lack civility. Not going to mention any names, but we know who they are. We know who you are. Anyway, thank you so much. And let me know what you think in the comments section below. I know a lot of pro-lifers are going to be very, very mad at me, and that's just normal and natural in the debate world. They just don't like people who are pro-abortion, no matter what you do. It is what it is. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, I'm out.